Hey there, this is Mr. Gonzalez with a quick review of our notes for our test. We talked about how there are three body systems that work to get us the things we need for cellular respiration. And this test will focus mostly on the digestive system. First, we said what digestion is. It's breaking down food into usable nutrients. And then we discussed some of the nutrients like proteins, carbs, lipids, fiber, vitamins, and minerals. We then went through the parts of the digestive system, starting with the mouth. We talked about how their shape is related to function, how your front teeth are good for chopping, your canines are good for tearing, and your molars are good, the back teeth are good for mashing. Incisors are the front teeth, canines are those fangs, and molars are your back teeth. We then said you can infer the diet of an organism just by looking at its teeth. And we had a lion at the top and a horse at the bottom. Two types of digestion in the mouth, mechanical digestion and chemical digestion. Mechanical is basically chewing your food into smaller bits and creating a bolus. The bolus is then formed by your tongue and goes to your back of your throat where you swallow it down your esophagus. And chemical digestion is where you have salivary glands, saliva, producing saliva to moisten the food, and also there's an enzyme amylase in the saliva that helps break down starch. Enzymes. Now, for example, starch gets broken down into a simpler sugar, the sugar being glucose. Enzymes are something that do that. They're proteins that control metabolism, and one thing they do is speed up reactions in the body. They also break up big particles, and they also make stuff for the body. Now, for example, if you had a sugar like sucrose, sucrose is a disaccharide, which is a double sugar. The enzyme kind of has a specific shape for a specific molecule, so this enzyme is designed to break up sucrose. Its name, sucrase, and so it joins up with the molecule, the disaccharide, and breaks off the bond to make two simple sugars, glucose and fructose. Glucose and fructose are types of monosaccharides. Okay, the pharynx. We talked a lot about choking during this part of the lesson. We said how you have an epiglottis, which is a little flap that closes your windpipe or your trachea. And when you swallow food, food goes down the esophagus, hopefully. But if you're talking or laughing while you eat, you can get particles of food or a large part of food stuck in the windpipe. We then talked about the Heimlich maneuver and how squeezing someone's diaphragm will cause air to shoot the food out. This picture is an image of the one on the bottom is a picture of the trachea, and the epiglottis is a flap right above that. We talked about peristalsis, that are muscle contractions that make food go against gravity. The stomach, your J-shaped sac that has two types of digestion as well. Mechanical digestion is the mixing of the food, and chemical digestion are strong acids which dissolve your food into a mush called chyme. We also talked about how your stomach has sphincters, which are like doors that prevent food from either going back up or moving down. And lastly, the enzyme pepsin, its job is to break down proteins. Both start with P, pepsin proteins. The small intestine, very long small intestine, but its main job is where nutrients are absorbed. And if you look at the wall of the small intestine, it's made up of tiny, tiny, tiny fingers. These fingers, each one is called the villus. If you put a bunch of them together, they're the villi. And the villi are, underneath the villi, inside the villi, are blood vessels. Now the villi are the projections in the small intestine where nutrients enter, and basically their shape is important because they increase surface area. You don't want a flat small intestine because nutrients don't have that many places to go in, but with the villi they have tons of places. Now food enters by diffusion, just like we talked about. Food goes from high concentration to low concentration because the blood doesn't have nutrients in it, and so food automatically goes in. Large intestine's job is to absorb water. Basically, any undigested food moves on to the large intestine, and water is absorbed back into the body. And any undigested food is helped out with bacteria. Bacteria break down food in our large intestine. They also produce a lot of gas that we talked about. And we talked about diarrhea, why it happens. And it's basically your body trying to get rid of, if you have food poisoning or anything, try to get rid of anything quickly. And so you don't have enough time to absorb the water. And so you know what happens. And lastly, in the duodenum, which is the first section of the small intestine, you have a lot of stuff going on. The first thing is here, the liver. The liver's job is basically to produce bile, and bile breaks up the fats in our food. The liver also, after a huge meal, and you absorb your nutrients, it stores any extra glucose that you have. And lastly, it releases this glucose when you have low blood sugar. Gallbladder stores bile. We also talked about how you can live without a gallbladder, you can get gallstones, you just have to watch your your diet. And the pancreas, one thing it does is that it neutralizes stomach acids. If it didn't do that, your duodenum would have ulcers or burn. Your stomach doesn't get digested because of a mucus layer, which we also talked about. And the pancreas produces insulin, which lowers your blood sugar and allows cells to take in blood sugar. We also talked about diabetes and how diabetics, their pancreas does not create enough insulin for the job. And that's it. Good luck.